everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. We're thrilled to have you here. I'm Kristen Uhlenbrock. I'm the Executive Director for the Institute for Science and Policy, and we are really excited to introduce you to the Colorado Science and Technology Policy Fellowship Program. Before we get started, I know many of you are joining us virtually. We will do a recording of this. If you have questions along the way that you want to ask, you can drop them into the chat feature. We'll have plenty of time to answer your questions at the end. But what we're going to do is we're going to kind of walk through the program at first. For those of you who are not familiar with the Institute for Science and Policy, we are a project of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. We see ourselves as a place where we can have thoughtful, meaningful dialogue on some of our most pressing issues impacting our society here in Colorado. Oh, thank you, Kate. We got slides happening for me too. So that was our mission. Our vision for the Institute is we want to be a place where people can honor our common humanity and science has a respected seat at the public policy table. The creation of the Colorado Science and Technology Policy Fellowship is an extension of the Institute's way to kind of do that work by working directly with our state legislators here at the Colorado Capitol in a way that is truly nonpartisan, that is non-advocacy based, and is bringing them access to some amazing resources, which are science and technology policy fellows who will come from a diversity of backgrounds and experiences and be able to directly serve not only our state house and our state legislators, but the entire state of Colorado. I think the Institute is very well positioned to be hosting this program. We've been working with our partners across the state, both in our decision-making capacities, as well as with our research universities and other groups all the way across Colorado to really scope and design this project to get it where we need to be that feels really much the right size at the right time and the right fit for the state of Colorado. We'll give you a little background and history about other programs that exist too. So why don't I walk you through the agenda today and pass this over to my colleague. So you heard a little bit about the Institute. We're not going to spend a ton talking about the Institute. You're welcome to visit us on our website if you're not familiar with our work. But we will talk about the history of science and technology policy fellowships as they exist nationally and across other states. We'll talk to you specifically about the Colorado program that is designed. We're in this 3-year pilot phase and what you can expect for that 3-year pilot. We'll answer and we'll give you an overview about the hiring and application process, which is, I think, many of yours interest today. And then we'll absolutely spend a lot of time in Q&A. So with that, I want to welcome and thank and introduce my colleague, Kate Long. Kate is our policy engagement specialist and has been absolutely instrumental in getting this program to where it is today. And I'm going to let her take over from here and lead us through this conversation. So thanks, Kate.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kristen. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. As Kristen said, my name is Kate, and I am the Policy and Engagement Specialist for the Institute for Science and Policy. Sorry. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance. I've incorporated a lot of those here into the presentation, but please continue to ask questions in the chat, and we will try to answer them all towards the end. So like Kristen said, to get us started, and since this is a new program here in Colorado, I wanted to just provide some additional context about science and technology policy fellowships, sort of generally. So since 1973, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, or AAAS, has placed science and technology policy fellows in all branches of federal government, so legislatively, executive, and judicial branches. These fellowships are opportunities for scientists to learn firsthand about policy and bring their analytical skills to the federal policymaking process. Today, over 30 different professional, scientific, and engineering societies sponsor these federal science and technology policy fellows, and they have created a network of over 4,000 science and engineering leaders, many of whom go on to continue careers in public service. So sort of using that model and realizing the potential for this type of opportunity in state governments, the first state level Science and Technology Policy Fellowship was launched in 2010 by the California Council on Science and Technology, which followed this AAAS model for S&T policy fellowships. As you can see on the map in the dark green here, there is a growing network of states that have established science policy fellowships since, including Connecticut, Idaho, Indiana, Missouri, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, West Virginia, Virginia, and some others. And now Colorado is joining this network as well. In the light green are states that are currently developing science and technology fellowships of their own as well. And so while each state in dark green here has a science policy fellowship, they do vary in different ways, but they all have this sort of same intersectional goal of being a professional development and learning opportunity for scientists, engineers, and technical experts to learn about policymaking and apply their analytical skills while also supporting state legislators, state governments, and state agencies in policymaking. This is a fantastic network that we are so thankful to be a part of and have support from as we begin this fellowship here in Colorado. And the Institute, Kristen and myself, have been a part of this network for some time now. So that's a little bit about that. And so how our fellowship got started. I said that we had been a part of this network of fellowships for a while. So back in 2023, the Institute received a competitive planning grant award from the National Conference of State Legislatures Center for Results-Driven Governing, which was supported by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. That award supported a year for us to scope, plan, and develop a version of a nonpartisan science policy fellowship that made sense for Colorado and for our state legislature here. We spent that planning year meeting with stakeholders and legislators and staff to determine their needs and their goals for if such a fellowship came to Colorado. Through those interviews, we received bipartisan and bicameral support from the legislature, positive feedback to launch the program. We've continued to foster relationships with legislators, their staff, other agencies, after that planning period ended last year, and we're going to continue doing that as we go forward. That's sort of a goal of us, and to keep building those relationships and working with legislators as we bring these fellows on. So a little bit more about the fellows and what they'll do. They will be conducting nonpartisan, independent, and objective research and analysis to support evidence-based policy development. Research tasks will be directed by legislators and use the most current scientific consensus. Fellows may also respond to constituents and stakeholder requests for research and information, among other duties. We are still currently exploring and finalizing the final placements for the fellows, so their exact work and day-to-day activities will be determined by their host offices, but fellows will receive their host offices within the first week of the fellowship. So for the 2025-2026 fellowship year, which starts in October of this year and lasts through September, we are hiring up to 4 fellows with backgrounds, knowledge, expertise, or relevant skills related to natural resources, which includes water, agriculture, wildfire, and economic development. Not all of those, but it can be sort of in that broad range bucket. Additionally, public health, which could include mental health and human services, as well as energy and climate, to also include transportation and planning, as well as AI and technology. Those with transferable and interdisciplinary skills are also encouraged to apply for the fellowship. These topics were selected throughout that planning year I was talking about, and our engagement and meetings with legislators to determine their legislative priorities that are common themes during session, or are policy areas in which additional scientific expertise and analysis could be useful. Fellows will serve 1-year appointments, and we are hoping that some will extend their fellowship for a second year based on the needs of the legislature. We are currently also reviewing our recruitment timeline for next year so that we can understand the needs of the legislature and the placement options in time for fellows to consider an extension decision about halfway through their fellowship year. So around this same time next year, we'll know that information about which fellows could extend for a second year. Fellows will also be employees of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, like myself, and then therefore cannot have additional part-time roles. We were asked about that a few times. So this is a full-time fellowship opportunity. The salary for fellows is $65,000 annually, which is comparable to other postdoctoral fellowships here in Colorado. We will also provide up to $4,000 for additional professional development or work-related travel opportunities, conferences, things like that. We can also provide up to $1,500 in relocation assistance for those who may need to move to Colorado for this position. So sort of an overview of the timeline for this fellowship. The applications close at the end of May. Please be sure to submit your applications before 6 p.m. Mountain Time on May 31st. This is an automatic deadline that is set by the application system, so we can't make any changes to that. So please just apply early and make sure you get it in by 6 o'clock Mountain Time on May 31st. Then throughout June and July, we will be reviewing those application materials, conducting phone screens and panel interviews, and we hope to let fellows know their notification of hire by the end of July. Fellows will start their one-year terms in October, and then that will, like I said, go through the following September. So there are so many reasons why you should apply to be a Colorado Science and Technology Policy Fellow, but I'm just going to highlight a few here. So as a fellow, you will participate in an orientation program to familiarize yourself with Colorado, the political landscape here, learn about state government and policy making, learn about how science impacts policy, key issues that are facing Colorado, as well as developing skills in science communication, decision making, collaboration, and conflict resolution, and so much more that will benefit you not only during your fellowship year, but throughout your future careers as well. So speaking of careers, fellows have many career opportunities following their fellowship year. Data from other science policy fellowship programs show that fellows often continue to work in state agencies or with the legislature or in other government jobs, or they do things like go work in trade or advocacy organizations, at policy research institutes, at private consulting firms, or even return to academia or teaching or so many other different things. Additionally, fellows will gain hands-on policy experience. They'll be immersed in the Colorado legislative policymaking process and be exposed to a plethora of knowledge and experiences that you can't get in a classroom or lab setting. Additionally, fellows applicants should want to challenge themselves. We understand that many applicants will come from an academic or a lab or other technical backgrounds and may have never been exposed to policy before. Technical experts have so much to contribute to the policy arena, and successful fellows should be willing to challenge themselves to work in environments that may be vastly different than they're used to, but bring a curiosity and openness to learning and applying your training in new disciplines. An interest in public service is also really important for applicants. Using your scientific training and knowledge of the scientific processes to impact science and inform decision makers. If that sounds interesting to you, then you should definitely apply. Additionally, Colorado is a really diverse state, both geographically and politically. Fellows are going to be expected to work and engage with a wide variety of members of the legislature, their staff, with constituents and groups who may have different views, opinions, understandings of science, and different communication styles and approaches that may challenge your own. We're going to provide fellows with the skills and support to understand and listen to those and also be able to conduct themselves in a nonpartisan manner. Additionally, if you want to help solve some of the biggest challenges facing Coloradans, the fellowship is for you. The thematic policy areas for this fellowship year were identified by legislatures and their staff as priorities for the state. While fellows still may be asked for input on scientific topics outside of their area of expertise, Colorado is a leader in many areas, and states often look to Colorado for examples of good policies. So, science and technology policy fellows here can help contribute to that and ensuring that Colorado stays a leader in scientific decision making. There are a bunch of qualities that make a successful fellow. A lot of these are highlighted on our website in our frequently asked questions section, but there's a couple that I did want to talk about today with you all. So it's not a requirement for applicants to be from Colorado or currently living in Colorado. We are looking, though, for applicants that have an interest in the state of Colorado and serving Coloradans. It's a great place to live and work. And as I mentioned earlier, we are providing $1,500 in relocation assistance if needed. Fellows also need to be flexible and adaptable and be able to manage multiple projects simultaneously. Strong analytical skills, in addition to expertise in their subject areas, is also really important. And you will need to possibly work with technical information outside of your field. So being able to handle that as well is really important for fellows. Fellows should also be open to thinking creatively and thinking of solutions that are sort of out of the box and new for Colorado. We're also looking for fellows that have excellent written and oral communication skills and can communicate complex and technical topics with both experts and non-experts. It's really important for fellows to be able to communicate clearly and concisely when working with both legislators, staff, and the public. And fellows must also understand the importance of and have a commitment to impartiality and being nonpartisan throughout their fellowship year. So for the application requirements of the fellowship, there is a requirement for degree completion by the fellowship start date, which is October 2025. We do encourage those who will not yet complete their degree by October or in the spring to stay engaged with the Institute, stay in touch with us, and apply for the cohort next year, so the 2026 to 2027 year. We are looking for applicants to have either a terminal degree, so a PhD or equivalent, or a master's in science, engineering, or equivalent. If you have a master's degree, we are looking for an additional 2 to 3 years of work experience in your field. And degrees can be in anything from natural sciences to social sciences, engineering, technology, or any sort of related disciplines that may be listed here. If you have any sort of specific questions about your degree, you can always shoot us an email, institute@DMNS. It's on the slide. You can email us there if you have specific questions about your degree program. Additionally, applicants must be able to work in the United States, so either a citizen or permanent resident. In the application, we ask for a couple additional materials to be submitted. One of those is a resume or CV. We don't have a preference between submission of a traditional sort of one-page resume or that longer academic CV. Just please use whichever is most applicable and appropriate to demonstrate your experience and qualifications. Additionally, in the cover letter, we would like you to sort of talk about why you're applying to the fellowship, what you hope to bring to the program, and what you hope to take away as well. Think of it as almost a personal statement about yourself and sort of your career goals and why this fellowship is right for you. The cover letter should also not be longer than 2 pages. That's the only thing with a length requirement. The resume has no length requirement. Additionally, we ask for 2 letters of recommendation. Our application system doesn't allow for the attachment of these, so please just have your recommenders email them to us. Again, that email is institute@dmns.org. That's listed in the application system as well as on our website. Have your recommenders send that to us. If you could have them, please use the subject line Colorado STPF letter of recommendation and your last name. That would be really helpful for us to just sort through them as they come in. Additionally, in the application, we have 3 short answer responses for you to respond to. these responses, you can start your application to get these and then save it so you can come back to it later. But in the short answer prompts, what we're really looking for is your ability to express your thoughts clearly and concisely. We're looking to see if you have strong writing and critical thinking skills. We're looking to see how you approach scientific and technical topics to explain them to non-scientific audiences. And we're also just looking to see through your thought process and how you talk about state level policymaking and how that relates to science. Thanks, everybody. So that's sort of all I have for the presentation today. I have a couple additional questions that were not part of my presentation that I'll go through now, and then I can get to the questions in the chat. So we did get a couple questions about remote work and residency in Colorado. So all fellows must reside in Colorado within commuting distance of Denver. Remote work, the ability to work from home will be determined by your host office or your manager. And then, like I said earlier, those host office placements will be determined within the first 2 weeks of the fellowship. We also were asked about the orientations and training, so I'd love to talk some more about that and a typical day for a fellow. So the first week or two of the fellowship will be an onboarding and orientation period where you'll receive those policy trainings and other professional development courses to begin your fellowship. You'll start to familiarize yourself with Colorado, the state legislature and policy processes. You'll learn about science communication, about nonpartisanship, among other topics to really prepare you for that fellowship year. We are not expecting applicants to have any prior training or experience in policy. We will provide all of that training, but instead just be really open and willing to learn. The fellows will do their training together as a cohort to bring the fellows together for that connection and develop relationships with each other so that they can be a support system for each other throughout the year. Additionally, in that sort of first couple weeks to month, you'll meet with your host offices and your managers. You'll set goals and plans for the year. You'll also be introduced to a network of research peers from institutions across the state who can support you and your research and your scientific analyses throughout your fellowship year. You'll also start to begin to meet with legislators and their staff and other stakeholders and start taking requests for research and projects. Specific day-to-day activities will vary throughout the year and depending on your host office as well. So we'll learn about that more during orientation. And sort of this time, starting in October, is really there to gear you up and prepare for the legislative session that starts in January in Colorado. Let's see, we also have a couple questions about what sets our fellowship, the Colorado Science and Technology Policy Fellowship, apart from others. So this is maybe my favorite part of our fellowship, and I think that is something different that we're doing here in Colorado, is that we are searching for applicants and for fellows with specific research expertise in different policy areas that meet the legislature's need for technical expertise. So while technology, public health, energy, and natural resources sort of broadly were identified as policy areas for this year, for 2025 to 26. That may evolve in the future as the state's needs change. And I personally find that exciting to see the potential to add value to policies here in Colorado. So now for some questions from the chat. And thank you so much to Kristen and my other colleague, Jordan, who is backstage compiling them for me. So just bear with me as I sort of get into these. I'm reading them off the side here. So the slides, yes, this presentation is being recorded, so you can go back and watch that. If the slides would be useful, we can make those available as well. Is funding contingent on pending fund? No, so we are going to be funded by independent philanthropic organizations, so we should not be impacted by any sort of funding cuts at the federal level. Correct. So the up to 4 fellows is 1 fellow per thematic track. So it will be 1 AI fellow, a climate fellow, a public health fellow, and a natural resources fellow to make up that cohort of 4 fellows. Oh, Okay, let's see. There is also, yes, is there a citizenship requirement for the fellowship? International applicants with valid work visas. Yes, if you currently have a visa and are legally able to work in the US, you can apply. There is no sort of citizenship requirement as long as you're able to work in the US. Okay, here's another question. Is it okay for candidates that have previous tech policy exposure but are looking for legislative experience? Could a candidate with a bachelor's and work experience in tech with a master's in public policy that focus on tech policy be a viable candidate? Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, please apply uh, with any sort of tech experience. Yes, let's see. Do letters of recommendation need to be sent at the same time as the application submission? No, but they do need to be received by May 31st. So you can let your recommenders know that you are applying to this and that you have that deadline of May 31st. The 6 p.m. is a little looser for the email submissions, but they can come in throughout the rest of the month. Is there a cutoff as to how many years of post PhD experience is the limit? Are you only looking for fresh PhDs or mid-career professionals can also apply? Absolutely. Mid-career professionals can apply for this type of work. Anyone can apply as long as you have that sort of degree requirement. Thank you. Let's see. Would we work on a congressional committee or how would it differ from the AAAS legislative fellowship? Yes, so like I said, we are exploring options still for placements. There is a possibility that a fellow could be working with a committee in this legislature or with different sort of agencies in the legislature or with other offices. So it really just depends on what those host offices are, but it could be similar to how the AAAS fellows staff committees at the federal level. Is the 2025 Summer Colorado Science, Engineering, and Policy Fellowship still happening? Yes, that fellowship is separate from this fellowship. That fellowship that I just mentioned, the Colorado Science and Engineering Technology Policy Fellowship, I believe, is still happening. Senator Cleve Simpson and Representative Kyle Brown are sponsors of that program for current students. So that program is still happening. I believe it is kicking off soon. We can get information to you for that if you need. But that is a separate program from this one. This one is for full-time professionals who already hold their degrees. So there's a little difference, and this is a year-long fellowship versus that other one is a summer fellowship. Let's see, another question here. Since the state legislature in Colorado only meets for half the year, roughly from January to May, how will the fellowship work outside of that period when they're in session? Yeah, this is a great question. So we, depending on your placement and your host office, fellows could work with interim committees or do other sorts of research tasks for legislators as needed. A lot of bill development and bill writing and planning for the next year happens in that sort of off season. Interim committees run from May through September, so that's also an option. Or sort of doing other tasks or independent research projects or sort of long-term projects as well for legislators could be things that fellows do during that session. We're sort of still working that out, and it will depend on your host office placement. I believe that I touched on this during my presentation, but there's a question here that says, should the resume be more of a professional resume or an academic CV? That is up to you and your preference, whichever one sort of best shows your qualifications and experience. No need if you have a long CV to turn that into a one-page resume or vice versa. So whichever you think is more applicable to your to sort of show what you're bringing to the fellowship and your application and your skills and experience. Is it worth applying if your technical background does not exactly fit into one of the four themes? I think so. There is definitely the possibility that you'll be working on things outside of those four themes. Those are sort of the themes that we're shooting for. But if you have any sort of transferable skills or interest in those policy areas, I think that it is worth it to apply, yes. Can I apply even though I'll be graduating next year? Unfortunately, no. We are looking for the degree to be in hand by October, but this Kristen mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that we're currently running a 3-year pilot program. So if you're graduating next year, I really encourage you to apply for the 2026-2027 fellowship year. Let's see. Here's a question here about specific requirements related to the letters of recommendation. So we're really looking for recommenders who can speak to sort of those slides that I had about qualities that a fellow should possess, why your recommender thinks you would be a good candidate, about sort of your work ethic, communication skills, all those sorts of things, similar to probably a letter that you had someone write for you when you applied to your graduate program, a very similar sort of letter to that, who can speak to your skills and why you would be a good fellow. How many letters of recommendation? We are looking for 2 letters of recommendation submitted by email to institute@dmns.org. That email is in the application and on our website. Submitted by your recommenders to us by email, if that makes sense. I think I said that correctly. Let's see. Will there be much travel outside of Denver depending on the track assigned? Do you engage with different stakeholders throughout Colorado? Yes, so we are planning for field trips and different things as part of that orientation, and early sessions is also something that could happen once session is over, but definitely connecting to all parts of the state. Colorado is a big and very diverse state. I mentioned geographically. We also are home to 2 federally recognized tribes, the Ute Mountain Ute and the Southern Ute. So definitely engaging with stakeholders and groups all across Colorado, as you will be working with legislators from all across Colorado, is definitely important and part of this fellowship. And that travel will either be covered through your stipend or through us. So that is covered. Will there be a similar timeline for next year for those who aren't ready to apply this year? Correct, yes. It may change slightly, but it will be the same sort of start in the fall and applying in this sort of early spring timeline. So yes, if you are on our mailing list or follow us on LinkedIn, all that information will be posted there next year as we get ready for the 2026-2027 fellowship year. So there's a question about, will the program facilitate and encourage fellows to continue working with the Colorado government once they finish their fellowship? That's not a requirement to continue to stay in policy or in government. We definitely could help make connections and, facilitate any sort of introductions if needed, but that is not a requirement of the fellowship to continue to stay in government or policy. If you want to go back to academia or could change careers, that is totally up to you. There is a couple questions here about that possible 2nd-year extension, how and when that would be decided and sort of what that means. Like I said, the thematic tracks are decided and with input from the legislature. And so what those will be for next year will depend on what priorities are for the legislature in the 2027 legislative session. So the fellows for this current year, the 2025 to 2026 fellows will be working in the 2026 legislative session. So for the following year, for the 2027 legislative session in Colorado, those priorities will be determined for that fellowship year and those thematic tracks. Likely the themes that were identified this year, particularly AI, climate and energy, public health. And wildfire and natural resources. Those are things that come up often and time again in the Colorado legislature, and they very well be the tracks for next year, but that is really just dependent on the legislature's needs. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question better. But ideally, we current fellows will know sort of 5, 6 months into their fellowship year what those themes will be for the following year and if they can continue on. So it will give you time to make that decision and then also not finish your fellowship year in September without potentially something lined up if you're unable to, if that um, makes sense as well. There's a question here. If someone graduated with a master's and has work experience but is currently a PhD student, can they apply? Yes, but you would need to then take a break from your PhD program to participate in the fellowship for a year. You would be unable to do both at the same time, as this is a full-time job, full-time fellowship that you would need to be present either at the Capitol with your host office throughout the year and couldn't be taking classes or studying. There is a question here, another one about the cover letters. In our cover letter, should we mention what track we would be most interested in and why would be a good fit? Oh, and they're so excited for the fellowship. Awesome. Yeah, please write what you're interested in. We can sort of figure it out based on your degrees. But yeah, definitely write us and tell us about why and why you think you would be a good fit for that and how it sort of relates to both your training and your experience and the thematic track. Yes. Let's see. There is a question about sick leave. Yes. So as employees of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, we receive really great benefits, health insurance, all of that, and you will accrue part-time off, paid holidays, all of that, sick time as well. Sick time and time off are sort of accrued separately, so you'll be able to access and have that. Your host office will obviously need to be aware if you're needing to use any sick time or time off, but yes, that is available to fellows. Let's see here. Do we expect for fellows to be working together on some issues? Yes, absolutely. You'll be spending time together throughout that sort of orientation period and get to know each other and lean on each other for support or help or guidance, especially if a fellow is assigned work that maybe not relates to their specific expertise, but could relate to one of the others. Definitely encourage collaboration across fellows. There is a question here about cost of living in Denver and Colorado. So we have the fellowship salary and benefits is competitive to other postdoc salaries available in Colorado that are currently being offered. Cost of living, it depends on sort of the area you live in and what your needs are for a family. But there are definitely sort of affordable areas in Denver, in the sort of Denver metro area, maybe not depending on what your needs are and your family size and all of that. It is, the transportation system is great. Denver is relatively walkable. You don't need a car, that sort of thing, as well are things to consider when calculating your cost of living. Let's see. There's a question about the seminar being recorded. Yes, it will be recorded. We'll send it out later this week and we'll have it posted on our YouTube channel as well. A question about the primary site of work that will likely be up at the state capitol, which is in the center of Denver, Colorado. But that will also sort of depend on your host office, and most are sort of in that sort of Capitol complex in Denver. And then also fellows will need to be present at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science for professional development or orientation or things. That is just a short drive across the city, but also located in Denver. There is a question here about interviews, if they will be virtual or in person. The interviews will all be virtual, so if you're not currently in Colorado, that's fine. They'll be done either over the phone or on a Zoom for the panel interview. Another question here about application materials that are more important or heavier than others. No, we'll consider all the things you submit sort of fairly. Definitely spend some time thinking about those short answer prompts. Those will be really important so that we can sort of see your writing skills and how you think about policy and those sort of communication skills and how you sort of explain your research in a non-technical way. That those are quite important. But our hiring rubric is they're all sort of weighted evenly, if that answers that question there. There's another question here about the timing between notification of hire and then the start date. So we'll have notification of hire will be sort of towards the end of July, and the fellowship will start in mid-October. So, there's about 2 months there for you to sort of finish what you're doing, enjoy the summer, take some time to yourself before the fellowship begins, including potentially moving to Colorado. If that's something that is needed by a fellow that we select, we'll obviously make sure that they can get that relocation assistance and support. We can help. We all live in Denver and Colorado and can help, with suggestions on areas to live in, places to move to, that sort of thing. Let's see. Oh, another person's very excited. Thank you. What makes an application stand out? Kristen, do you want to jump in here? I see you popped on.
Yeah, there was a couple of other questions too, Kate, I can't believe, Kate, you handled all those questions. Great questions.
I
I
think
really,
I'm losing my voice, but
yeah.
thank you, everyone.
Yeah, Kate, you tell me what do you think is going to stand out to you when you're looking at the applicant pool? And I'd be happy to share some thoughts as well too. I'll start.
Why
So,
don't you start?
yeah, I'll start. Yeah, in addition to obviously having some of the relevant expertise to that subject area, that thematic area will be really critical. You are meant to be a subject matter expert to some degree and a resource to tap into a broader network of experts in that realm. So that's really helpful. It'll help you stand out. Um, we are looking for those really, transferable skills as well too. So being able to show that you have strong communication skills out of the gate, you have strong writing skills, you have strong ability to collaborate, to work across the diversity of people that you'll get a chance to work with. Make sure you're highlighting those aspects in your application and calling them out. Those who are multidisciplinary can be really strong as well too. So just kind of lean into, I think, what you think is appealing. Obviously, read through the application closely, read through the website, understanding a little bit about what these needs are. I think, and then just making sure those are emphasized. We are asking those 3 questions for a reason, to try to get to know you a little bit more. So give some thought into those 3 questions that we have identified. Kate, I wanted to, flag this question for you to make sure we clarified it and answered it for folks, which was about, in the application, the request to identify a primary and a secondary track. Will the applicants be divided up and considered according to which tracks they apply to, or will they only be considered for the ones that they select? Did you address that? Do you want to clarify anything around that?
Yeah, you can start here, Kristen.
Yeah, so that is meant to help us sort through the applicants, absolutely. And we want to see what is a priority for you based on your expertise and your ability to work. If by chance you're interested in all the thematic tracks and you can make the case to somehow make that case for us, just note that somewhere in your application process, and we will be seeing and reviewing everything, and so we can flag that. I do think to focus in on what you think your strengths are and where you're aligning thematically will serve you best, versus trying to work on any and all of those topics. So I do think there is intentionality of us trying to identify thematic tracks because that's what we've heard. So I do think try to lean into that, and yes, absolutely do note if you would be interested in being considered for other thematic tracks. And I know that's not available in the process of how we have it on there. So just make a note somewhere in your cover letter or something else, and we'll be sure to note that as we look through the materials.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would almost consider it as maybe the primary track is maybe what your degree is in, but your secondary is the thing that you're really maybe interested in outside of that. And you could think of it that way as well.
Hey, do you want to scan through some of all those questions, make sure we answered all of them for folks? I will kind of keep looking. One other question I'll answer, Kate, while you're scanning through the rest, and I can't believe Kate answered all your questions. She did an amazing job. You guys had great questions. Are we able to talk about the hiring pipeline after the fellowship, what that could consist of? You know, one part of not only the Colorado Fellowship Program, and this is a pilot. This is our first year doing it. And we're super excited for the very first cohort to continue to work with us and give us feedback on their needs and preferences and everything that will come as we fully develop this program. The beauty is there is a great network that exists of fellows from the other states. There's the national network that exists through AAAS and the other scientific societies. And then there's this great state network of fellows that have gone through these programs in other states. And so I do think there's access to that network by becoming a fellow. And we're building that robust network now because we're collaborating really closely as states. So I think there's an opportunity there for fellows to kind of tap into other fellows that have gone through this experience in other states, the jobs that they've gone into. I do think as we're supporting the Colorado specific program, one of the beauties of us creating this program is we are creating networks to support the fellows. So we're creating networks connections to both the research community, to the business community, to the legislative decision-making community. And so I do think this is an opportunity for you all to consider what those career opportunities could be like as you go through this program, because you're going to be connected to a ton of people. And so while this obviously no job guarantees a next job, this does open up a lot of opportunities as far as connections and networks for you. And it's something that we'll be supporting and building into the program to help make sure that not only this experience is great for you, but what you want to do with your career, that we're helping be part of that mentor network. Hey, anything you want to add to that pipeline question or any other questions that jumped out that we didn't quite cover?
Yeah, it looks like there's a couple here clarifying the number of fellows. So yes, it is 4 fellows, one for each of the thematic tracks. So there will be a AI fellow, a sort of climate fellow, natural resources fellow, and public health fellow. And then sort of broadly under that, what their exactly expertise and degrees are in. And then of course they'll work sort of broadly across all topics that are discussed in the legislature that need sort of scientific expertise, technical recommendations. That and then the potential for renewal and the ongoing number of fellows. Currently, it will be 4 fellows each year. So that will sort of depend. Potentially, if we receive more funding or additional support for the fellows, we could have more. But currently, it is for 4 fellows each year. And then if a fellow stays on, like I said, will be determined by the legislature's needs and what the capacity that they have is. Let's see, there's another question about the interviews. It'll likely be like an hour-long panel interview. Kristen and myself, some members of our advisory committee, some host office managers and leaders will likely be on those as well. The interviews we're sort of asking to know about you, the typical interview questions, about your research, about, sort of how you think. We're looking to see how you solve problems, how you talk, how you communicate, how you work with different groups, how you work with your peers, those sort of things. Kristen, anything to add? I can't remember the questions off the top of my head.
No,
But
I think that's a good overview. Yeah.
yeah, it
Hey,
won't be like a technical interview like for a consulting firm where you'll have to do problems and things, nothing like that.
yeah. Hey, I did see a question here just to clarify in case it was answered, but to reemphasize a question around the list of host offices involved, our fellows with individual officers, the advising committees. Kate, do you want to kind of just emphasize where we are right now?
Yeah, so we are still working with our host office options. Nothing is exactly finalized yet, but likely fellows will be working in some office in the legislature, whether that be a member office or with a committee or with the legislative council staff, the nonpartisan research office, or in the majority or minority caucus offices. There are policy offices that exist within the caucuses as well. So we're exploring all these options. We don't have that finalized for you right now, but expect to be working at the Capitol with an office up there. Or next door to the Capitol. Some of them are in sort of annex buildings, but you'll be able to go.
And I'm excited. I please go ahead and drop any other questions. And I think Kate and I are looking at our list and everything. There was a ton. I think we covered most of them, but if we haven't, please flag them one more time for us. We've got a few more minutes here. We'll wait for any sort of final questions that come in that Kate can see and answer. We'll make sure Kate's contact information is shared again so you all can reach out to her directly and specifically if you have questions. I will say we're really excited for this program. We're excited for the first cohort. We're hoping many of you apply if you haven't already applied or consider applying. It's a really exciting opportunity. Also because you're going to be the first one to do it with us, and we're intentionally have 3-year pilots scoped and funded, and we're excited to take that 3-year pilot and the experiences that you all have and help us create what is going to be that long established program here for the state of Colorado. And we have a wonderful network of other states that we're working on, but obviously what's the program that works for Colorado is the program that's going to work for Colorado. And so we're really excited to obviously have it really well scoped for that first year. We've learned a ton from all the other states. We've learned a ton nationally of how these programs work. And yet this is the first time for Colorado. And so we will be absolutely looking at that 3-year pilot and where and how can we strengthen? Can we perhaps grow this to have more fellows in the future? There is no limit yet other than obviously figuring out making sure it is well resourced and well funded beyond the 3-year pilot scope. I just wanted to put that out there as an exciting opportunity for you all to kind of be here at the ground floor for something new for Colorado. Kate, were there any other questions that popped up that you think we should address right now?
Yes, there was one question that was asking for specifics on the short answer prompt about how an applicant handles research outside of their area of expertise. We're looking there for, yeah, sort of your insight into your research methodology and that overall process that you use for research rather than sort of your specific expertise there. So not necessarily how you work in your own field, but how if you came to a problem that you have no background in, and what would you do and sort of your process, your thought process there. Yeah. And
And there,
Jordan, it looks like she just put the Institute email. If you have specific questions, I see there's one about someone with 2 degrees, please email me at the Institute inbox. We'll respond to that and answer those specific questions as well.
and there is a question. No, you do not need letters of recommendation to be sent at the time of your application. We just need the letters of recommendation due by the due date, May 31st. So please have all your materials in at the time. Letters of recommendation can come in separately. We will track them separately. We just expect everything to be in by May 31st at 6 p.m. So feel free to fill out your application in advance as you're recruiting and selecting those letters of recommendation.
And the application will let you enter it and save it as well, so you don't have to be fully prepared to answer all those questions when you first go into it as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for all these fantastic questions. I'm really looking forward to reading all your application materials and kicking off this fellowship. So thank you, and thank you to Kristen and Jordan behind the scenes. Thank you so much for pulling all these questions for us. Have a great day, everybody.
Great day, everyone. Thank you, Kate.